to share with you an interesting factual observation I've made about Koreans and, my attempt to explain it. And this is not meant to be disparaging. It's just a factual observation, something I've noticed in personal experience and personal interactions. Something that was curious to me, so I thought about it for a while, and I think I can explain it, at least in part. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I want you to tell me what you think below. So one thing I've noticed about Koreans, and there are a lot of Koreans in my hometown, which is Anchorage, is that all of their shit is Korean. You see them driving around, and most of the time, 7 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10 or whatever it is, they're driving a Korean car. They're driving a Kia or a Hyundai. And, all the rest of their shit is Korean too. Their television is an LG or a Samsung, and their refrigerator is an LG or a Samsung. Their, washer and dryer. And, I know from anecdotal experience that it's very, very rare for a Korean to have a Whirlpool washer and dryer or a GE washer and dryer. I mean, it happens, but it's very, very rare. 9 times out of 10, it'll be a Samsung or an LG. So, this was a little bit curious to me because this is an extraordinary level of brand loyalty. And being as I am a, individualistic, atomistic Western consumer, this initially did not make a lot of sense to me. Because the way you shop, if you are an atomistic, individualistic Western consumer, is you go out and you compare price and features, and you make a choice that you think represents the best value for your needs or your desires or your requirements. And that could be a Korean product or a Japanese product or a European product or an American product or a Chinese product, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of difference. There are a few people who buy American on principle, but not many. It's mostly old codgers. Everybody else just shops on price and features and value and performance, right? So, why would you have that nationalistic brand loyalty? And I think what they're doing is, first of all, it's a time-saving heuristic, right? It's an economizing heuristic. You don't have to do as much comparison shopping if you know you're going to limit yourself to Korean brands, all right? If you know that all your electronics are going to be LG or Samsung, if you know that all your cars are going to be Kia or Hyundai, right? You just don't have to look at the others. You're probably not paying much for that economy, for that time savings, because in a Western market where you do have atomistic, individualistic Western consumers that vendors and suppliers are competing to supply, of course, the price and performance and features of those products are going to be competitive, right? Otherwise, the atomistic, individualistic consumers won't buy it. So, of course, it's going to be a competitive value. So if you just stick to one national origin, you're not getting you're maybe not getting the best deal in some objective sense all the time, but you're not getting far off. You're not paying a huge penalty for doing that because, of course, it's going to be competitive on price and features and everything else. The other thing you're doing is you're sending the producer's surplus over to your kinfolk back in Korea. So every transaction generates consumer surplus and producer surplus. And so if you're a consumer and you buy a product, the value of that product to you minus what you pay to get it, so the net benefit of purchasing that product, that's your consumer surplus. So your Western consumer is looking to maximize their consumer surplus. And, I think in contrast, the Korean consumer is not looking to maximize the consumer surplus so much, but looking to maximize the consumer surplus plus producer surplus accruing to their genes, to their kinfolk. And of course, they're not paying a huge penalty in consumer surplus for the reason I already mentioned, because it is a competitive market. because we're doing the comparison shopping for them, and we're making sure that the prices and features are competitive. So they don't have to do all that. They can save all that time. They don't pay a very large penalty in consumer surplus. But what they do is they throw all the producer surplus to their kin back home in Korea that they left behind. And so they're maximizing the consumer surplus plus producer surplus accruing to their genes, to their ethnicity, to their kin group. And they're doing that a lot better than we do that because, we throw our producer surplus that our transactions generate all over the place. We throw it to China, we throw it to Japan, we throw it to Europe, we throw it to Latin America. We throw it all over the place. We don't care where it goes because we're just thinking about the consumer side of the equation. We're not thinking about the producer's side of the equation, the benefit that the producer is deriving from that transaction. But, for a very small penalty in consumer surplus, you can throw all of that producer surplus to people who are related to you. And if they do the same for you in return, then, it's a tremendous advantage that your group can enjoy in competition with others. Because, if your kinfolk are throwing their producer surplus at you, then you have more resources to invest in consumer surplus for yourself. And if you're throwing your your producer surplus that your transactions generate to them, then they have more resources to generate consumer surplus for yourself. So they all benefit from that ethnocentric pattern of behavior, from that ethnocentric loyalty, from that ethnocentric strategy. They benefit from that. They all benefit from that mutually by throwing that benefit to each other and not just throwing it willy-nilly to anybody and everybody. So I think that's what they're doing, and I could be wrong about that, and maybe it's not even conscious, maybe it's just an evolved strategy, but I think that's probably what they're doing. I think it probably works pretty well, and I think they probably derive some benefits from that strategy that we're foregoing by trying to squeeze a little bit more consumer surplus out of every transaction. So, let me know what you think below. I kind of think that's what's going on, and we might be able to benefit by adopting similar strategies.